Check one, two. Check one, two. Testing, testing.
Table. How do I get through? How do I get through? I think I got.
You ready? Is everybody ready? Okay. Hello, we're going to stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Good evening. Welcome to our January meeting. Under unanimous consent, approval of the meeting minutes. Everyone had a chance to review the minutes. So I have anybody have any questions or concerns? Nope. All right, Christine, unanimous consent. Next up will be committee reports. All committees met this evening. So the first committee report will be from Finance and Operations.
Yes, finance and operations. We looked over potential budgeting for the capital projects. It was kind of a short meeting, but we did get some things accomplished, and we're looking at some different items. And that's all I have to report.
Okay, thank you. Next committee report will be from Personnel and Policy. Mrs. Smart.
Thank you. So we were going through first read policies this evening. They're listed on the agenda. There were a number of selections that we needed to make that we reviewed, and we'll give those to you, Christine, just following our best practice. There were two policies in the first reads that we'd like to propose that we take a deeper look at as a board, perhaps on a board retreat, related to our meetings and just sort of the all of the details around how our meetings are run. And we just feel like it's a really good refresher and something for the whole board to really sort of dive deep in and agree upon that. As well as there's on policy 011, principles of governance and leadership, is the principles and values that the board has, and that we all sort of commit to. Again, we feel it's worthwhile as a group to dive in deeper and just make sure we're all aligned on those, and if there's any other changes that we want to make. So if we could we'll talk to Mr. Owen when he is back, and we'll just sort of talk to him about adding that to a future board retreat agenda. We also we were looking back, previously last year, we had a discussion around our social media policy, and use, and we'd like to, it's not on the agenda tonight, but we would like to make sure that we go and look at that deeper again as a group, as a full board. So would also potentially, depending on the timeliness, propose that being at a board retreat as well. So we can all align on that. Otherwise, no other major discussions or changes. There are a number of policies tonight that are our second read that we had looked at in 2023, and I don't think there's any other recommendations we would have on those. That's it.
Okay, so we're going to table. Yeah, thank you, Mrs. Smart. We're going to table what was the numbers? Policy number 011 and 006.
Christine, we will give you, there were selections, PSBA recommended selections that we did make on that. So we'll give those to you so that you can have the full policy sort of ready for when the board does go through that.
Thank you. Any questions for policy and personnel? All right. The next committee report will be curriculum, instruction, and technology.
I will be reporting out tonight.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Nichols gave us an IT update that this summer we will be moving to the cloud, fully to the cloud this summer. That'll help with malware and some vicious attacks that sometimes the district goes to. We'll also be switching to Go Guardian, which is a filtering software that our staff uses for our students. Shifting to that. I didn't get a timeline for that, but shifting to it pretty soon. Mr. Toscano discussed third grade. They'll be switching to a self-contained classrooms in third grade at Lynch. That's a change to where they're departmentalized right now. He also discussed CKLA update, which is a reading resource that K through 5. They recently visited Williamsport with some of their school leaders and to see it, and they were really happy with what they saw, and they're getting some pricing updates on that. That'll be probably coming to the board in the future. We also discussed some different acts that have been passed. Act 35, which requires a half credit financial literacy course that'll have to be started to be taught in 2026, 2027 school year. PD will release that pretty soon. Act 33, which is an educator pipeline support grant, which will help in high vacancy areas, some will be able to receive 10,000 stipend for student teachers and 2,500 for their co-op teacher. Act 91, which will allow substitute teachers to work unlimited number of days in specific areas, allowing them for hiring of classroom monitors to cover classrooms until the end of 2025, 2026. And then Mr. Toscano also mentioned that the comprehensive plan is up for voting. That is up for the 2024-2027 school year. It will be coming out to the whole board. The copy of that probably tomorrow or Friday. It's almost identical to our current plan. There's just a little bit of tweaks in there. Well, he's asking that will be voted on in the February meeting. And that is all we have.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any questions for curriculum, instruction, and technology? All right, the next committee report, extracurricular activities. Mr. Reed is at an extracurricular activity.
You want me to?
Do what? I can just give a quick report. We did meet this evening. On our agenda, we discussed summer rec program for the upcoming summer. We also discussed after school rec session. Tomorrow's the final day for session 5. And we discussed strength and conditioning program. And we were updated on the fall sports coach evals and the winter sport team updates. We were also Mr. Stage and Mr. Sullivan had a informational meeting with Daktronics regarding scoreboards and different opportunities with scoreboards. You want to add anything else, Mrs. Cooper?
I don't believe so.
We are looking at the summer rec program, continuing with that. Just going to mention the strength and conditioning program.
Yeah, that we are going to, it was approved for the fiscal budget in July. Due to many circumstances, it did not develop out of our control with different contracts and different bids we received. We do have one, and we did agree this evening to run it February, March, April, May,
In June.
and
End
June.
of June. 5 months.
Until for anyone who's off season who wants to work on their sport or getting fall sport ready, or any strengthening that is needed for someone during a spring sport,
Right. And
but
we-
not past that. We would
This
then
will
revisit
also-
it for July for next year.
Yeah, we're gonna revisit in July. We want to see what interest is in for the next 5 months. If we can get the kids interested and the coaches to take
Right.
part in it, we'll move forward from there then after July.
Correct.
So the other part of the money that was set aside for that will go towards the summer rec program, which was a huge hit last year. So,
We serve a lot of students in the district in the summer rec program.
at no
And-
cost,
Right.
so.
So in order to continue having that, a second half of that budget, we can increase it, as well as possibly one of the thoughts was to increase it with possibly some more adults. Perhaps a student teacher or someone in college studying elementary ed or something like that. Just to handle if there's some issues that students may not be able to handle discipline, to have a few more adults. There was no problems, just seeing that going forward, if it's gonna grow, it would help to have more adults there if there's more children involved.
Does
Right?
anybody have any questions?
It's
Okay,
an effort.
All right, we will move on to superintendent's report. Mr. Stage?
Thank you, Mrs. Minnick. Just want to give some people the update. The weather has been very interesting the last several weeks. We've tried to have this meeting times. So I appreciate that we're able to get together tonight. We've used 3 weather days thus far. We have 1 left. We do have 5 flexible instructional days left to use. And just to clarify, we use weather makeup days first to preserve instructional time as we prepare for our state testing. And if you'll notice, the calendar will reflect that we use the weather makeup days in order. We try to prioritize prior to the state testing windows as those weather makeup days come off so that those days still can be valuable time. I just wanted to have a brief moment to explain that. I also want to give a brief building update. Each month, I will try to give an update on all 4 buildings, and then I'd like to introduce Miss Allie Kemp to give the building update for Rowe. At Lynch, they're doing the Great Kindness Challenge, which is going on this week. It's being led by their student council, and the goal is to make a chain of kindness to display around the school. They're working on attendance awards for the month of January as well. In the first semester, they'll be celebrating with those students for excellent attendance and participation in their education. They're working to plan their next CATS Day to celebrate their PBIS system, positive behavior reward system, and the positive behaviors around all of Lynch Busted. Lynch has 4 Odyssey of the Mind teams who are working hard and practicing after school to prepare for their competition next month in the Poconos. They're actually competing at Pocono Mountain West High School on February 24th. I hope to make it. Another item of note, classroom teachers are working hard to plan their family engagement activities to take place during the second half of the school year. Out at SRU, they're also participating in the Great Kindness Challenge. Students are working to create a culture of kindness that we can sustain for the second half of the year through completing a kindness challenge during lunch and recess. And this is being led by the newly formed student council out at SRU. They have a CATS Day coming up where they spend an hour rewarding students for following the CATS expectations and during the second marking period. And then they also spend some time reteaching students some of the expectations that they have. Semester attendance awards were given out to students that had 8 days excused or less for the first marking period. SRU was proud to report that 95% of their student body qualified for that, which allowed a nice surprise showing of the Mario brothers. I guess Mario and Luigi made an appearance. Their 5th grade ski trip is January 30th. And they wanted to note and say, wish Mrs. Lori Perry well. Her last day at SRU was last week. She was in the autistic support classroom as a teacher, and she has retired. At the high school, high school's modern band has put together their first performance video, which you can see on YouTube, and we'll link that on our Facebook page. The newly formed gaming group or esports group will be competing with schools throughout the IU. I believe their first competition is coming up, and they are competing in Rocket League. If you understand that, that's basically a video game where you play soccer with cars. I don't know anything more than that, so can't wait to see what that looks like. Students are working hard and turning in PBIS tickets for some big rewards. So the PBIS system is going well. And on the horizon, they'll be hosting Guthrie's gastroenterology and pulmonary department to share the effects of vaping on young lungs. And most recently, they wanted to celebrate Brooke Geiger, who won a half scholarship to the Washington Leadership Conference. She was presented at the FFA midwinter conference at the PA Farm Show, and we're very excited for her. She is the first student from our school to attend. It'll be this summer. Simon Beeman, Carter Clark, Rachel Jelloff, Hannah Shutter all received their Keystone degrees also at the Farm Show. Kudos to them. And for the report at Rowe, I have Miss Allie Kemp here, and if she could come up and give the report for Rowe, that would be wonderful.
I just have a quick question on the SRU report.
Yep.
Did the elf make it back to the North Pole?
I believe he did.
Is that on, Mr. Nichols? There you go, Ally.
Good evening. I am Allison Kemp, a Harlan Row Student Council Officer. Thank you for inviting me to today's meeting, Mr. Stage and school board members, to discuss the great work we have been doing for our school community. 7 members of the Harlan Row Middle School Student Council traveled to Altoona, Pennsylvania on September 22nd to the 23rd in 2023 for the 87th Pennsylvania State Student Council Conference. Over the 2-day conference, students participated in 3 workshops that focused on promoting school spirit, becoming better leaders, and giving back to the community through service projects. They also had the privilege of hearing from the keynote speakers Nick Sunshine Tuckman, a former star of the TV show Deadliest Catch, Alexa Score, a professional wakeboarder who overcame bone cancer, and RJ Long, a former PASC student and advisor. In the fall, we collaborated with the FFA to organize a fall festival that included a bonfire and a cornhole tournament. We plan to make this event annual. In December, we hosted an activity day where students played board games, created crafts, and participated in a dodgeball tournament. The tournament raised $495. We planned the money to Luke's Hidden Haven in the form of animal care items. We will budget the earned money to purchase the most supplies. On February 14th, we will deliver those items to Luke's Hidden Haven. We will also travel to the Sarah Nursing Home to deliver Valentine's Day cards and teach a craft to the residents. We're organizing an ice skating event for February 15th for the middle school students as a fun extracurricular activity. In closing, I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge that it's School Board Appreciation Month. On behalf of our school student council members, I would like to thank you for your service to this Athens area school district. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ally.
Thank you.
Miss Kemp, you did a wonderful job. Thank you. And she stole my thunder. I was going to share that it is Board Appreciation Month, and you each were given a nice bag of popcorn from Leanne. Thank you, but a certificate of appreciation on behalf of the PSBA for all that you do. So thank you. And again, appreciate you. I will conclude my report, and I will give up a summary after we do each, when we come to each section.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So no blast IU report, NTCC report, Mrs. Cooper.
Yes. NTCC had their reorganization meeting last Thursday. Everything stayed the same. Our Michael Owen was the treasurer. So the representative from Canton is going to interim, as their yearly is the same as ours, where treasurer is it until what, April or May? So Tom will take that over till May. The welding project is in completion. So they have an extra 5, 8, 10 welding stations. They have 20 inside and there's extra outside. Very well done. Their seats are full. We represent, again, 23% of the seats at the Northern Tier Career Center. So we also then have 23% of the budget. We pay 23%. But the nursing program had their first testing, and for the first time they all passed. And there was 82 passing, like extremely proficient, which is fantastic. So really good things going on. If you haven't gone ever, it's fantastic. They're hosting open houses. I believe I saw our posting for Athens for 10th graders for tours. And anytime someone wants to shadow, have them go to the guidance counselor and ask for it. You can shadow at Northern Tier Career Center for a day, even if it's not the whole 10th grade, just to have your child see what they do. That's it.
Okay, thank you. PSBA. I'll just report on 2 things that starting in the school year 2026-2027, high schools will be required to provide a course in personal finance, where which will be at least half of a credit that the students will have to take in order to graduate. So that will be coming up, and I think we're ahead of that because I think we've been discussing a personal finance course the last couple of months. So that's one thing that's going to be effective 26, 27. One of the other things I saw that I thought was interesting, there's a state rep in the 139th district that is working on legislation to bring cursive writing back into schools. That was just something I thought was interesting. Since the kids can't write cursive. But anyway, those are the two things I wanted to report on. Mr. Barrett, solicitor's report.
Tonight, I want to report on requests that come to the board for tax exonerations from real estate tax. There are several groups of citizens that are entitled to tax abatement, some automatic, and if the administration gets a request for an automatic or it comes to the tax office, they're granted. But there are some that come to you that have your discretion whether to give it or not, whether it's a 501c3, a charitable organization, or whatever. And normally those requests come to the county, they come to the municipality, which would either be a borough or a township in our case, and they come to you. Now, the practice here is they're usually referred to me, and I consult with the solicitors for the county, a solicitor for the county, and the solicitor with the municipalities to see what they're doing, because we all want to do it uniformly. We think that's a fair way to go. And if I don't get a response, or if I get a negative response, I'll report it back. But and sometimes that takes some time. So, yeah, I'm not going to report on any specifics tonight, but I have a couple that that we're working on, and I want to share them with you at the appropriate time. But they are by no means automatic, and it's something you have to consider, because it, quite frankly, can cost you quite a bit of money that you have to make up from other sources. That concludes my report tonight, Madam President.
Thank you. Okay, it takes us to financial business. Listing of the bills, general fund bills, cafeteria bills, earned income tax report for November of 23 and December of 23. Berkheimer, income tax report for 2023 year in review. Secretary Treasurer report, the high school student activity, and the Harlan Row Middle School activity. Do I have a motion to bring these to the table?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Okay, second and a motion. Does anyone have any questions or dialogue on any of these?
Mrs. Minnick, I think one request that was made of myself from Mr. Owen was to give a little bit more of basically a summary of what we're going through in each of the agenda items, just so that we're a little bit more out in the public about some of the things that are being voted on. And just to briefly discuss the bills, if you look at through the bills, some of the big ticket items that you might see, our electric bills are usually probably pretty large, but draw your attention to things that, have impacted us. You look at Achievement House Cyber Charter School, Agora Cyber Charter School. We have PA Commonwealth Charter School, PA Cyber. You can see those bills in there. Those are not bills that are they're not monthly, they're not quarterly. It's when we are asked, they submit invoices to us for payment. Now, a question was raised to me earlier. Do we have to pay the cyber charter bills? So the answer to that question is yes and no. You do it one way or the other. You pay the bill when you get it, or PD can keep it from your basic end funding at the end of the year. There may be a penalty if you don't pay on time, because interest could be charged. But if you add that up, it's quite a substantial amount dollars that are being spent. You'll also notice we have payments for Northern Tier Counseling. Those are for our social workers. We are looking to replace some. We've received some resignations lately. They've been pretty invaluable to our students, and actually to some of our staff. I just wanted to point some of those things out to everybody. Serving, that's also a service for students, where students go to get services throughout the day. TransFinder is our bus routing software, and this was for a software upgrade because it was outdated. So we upgraded it. It was already up and running. And if you move through the pages, and these are just individual bills that everybody's going to receive, people put in submitment for reimbursements and whatnot. These are all tuitions, mileage, dental, all that stuff. But farther down, you'll see the lines are double coded. And one thing I wanted to point out was the Amazon bill. Amazon is where we purchase the majority of all of our school supplies, and that is budgeted ahead of time, and that is items purchased through the buildings or through the district. We get it. We do a commercial billing. We have a commercial account through Amazon. So we do that through there, and it's effective. It's cost effective for us to do that. And I just wanted to make sure everybody's aware that, we're not just out hitting prime deals all the time. But it varies from month to month.
That's me. I'm questioning.
No, it's great. It's a great
Question to
question. It varies month to month based upon the requests we get from teachers and administrators. We don't have a central supply anymore, so we don't bulk purchase items. Mainly because when we did the study, it was not cost effective. We actually ended our central supply about 10 years ago. In fact, we were buying too much. We were not getting rid of items, and it was actually costing us more money to have someone operate a central supply. So now we do almost a drop ship to each building, and we use Amazon. We also use other things like school specialty and other suppliers that directly work with school districts. Also, you might see on that we have 3 district credit cards. 3, Jenny. 3 credit cards for the district.
No, we have a few more.
Oh, we have a few more, but we only have a very few number of people that have access to district credit cards for purchasing. And we'll purchase items for clubs, and they will reimburse us for those purchases. For example, if a club is taking a trip and they need to put a deposit on a hotel, or they need to pay for their entry fee, we will pay that. They will reimburse through their club accounts.
Because I found Universal Studio tickets and I
It's
wanted
okay.
to know who was going.
But you know what? It's a great question to ask. Also,
No. Oh, yes, it
yeah,
is.
it was the senior.
Like, no.
If you go down the list, income tax reports are just the monthly reports. Athens Area High School student activity count. Now, you might not have seen that for a while, and that's because we had some changes in personnel, and it took Ms. Shores quite a while to help straighten the books up and get things up and running. So you should see that more regularly now. The accounts at both the Athens Area High School student activity count and Harlan Row Middle School, those are accounts that we hold the money, but those are separate accounts. They raise money. They're for clubs and activities, and even sometimes like a group like the Jeans for Teens Club, our group, which is something where teachers donate to. The money's held with us, and then they distribute it. They donate. They do things with it that helps our students. I just wanted to kind of give a brief update. Did I miss anything? And if there's any other questions, I'd be glad to try to answer them. I'm not saying that I tried my best.
I would just like I guess just a review of the clubs, the
Oh,
high school and the middle school
Sure.
level, to just, and kind of just know what they do.
Okay.
Kind of like the PCA club.
Right.
And then there was another one. What was that? Computer something club.
The Computer Build Club.
Yeah.
So these are
Oh, yeah.
all of the clubs that have been in existence at the Athens Area High School. Some of them are active and some of them are dormant. And if they ever start up again, they still have an account. So the Computer Building Club, I'm not sure if they're active, right? Bill,
Yeah, the computer building club is the class that Mr. Prince teaches.
that's a class, even better.
Yeah, he calls it a club, but in that computer building, you take funds and take monies from the kids to build computers.
There's a robot build one too, right?
What's that?
The robot bill to, engineering two, they get
Yeah,
$150.
they get the
Yeah.
But that fund, for instance, for kids who want to. DCA is positive and change in Athens. It's a group of kids led by Mrs. Alford, Mr. Rose, who will get together and meet weekly after school. Sometimes they just help out custodians, they volunteer their time down to the shop, and they just work on trying to come up with ideas and projects to make a positive impact on the student body at high school.
All right, thank you.
Well,
Can I add?
Thank you, Mr. Stage.
I had one thing.
I would like to see as we go through these numbers of these prices and you say Amazon and a couple other sources. We did talk about, not here, but during the operations, I would like the district to possibly, if we could possibly look into also Sourcewell as well for staples.
Okay.
Things of that nature, paper products, janitorial services. That is a large, it's a federal, it goes across the country and that actually might beat the prices out for Amazon as well. I'm not saying everything, but Sourcewell contract is actually very large in the United States now. And a lot of districts across
Okay.
the border is using them.
If it helps us reduce our expenditures and still provide the resources we need, we'll look.
And
And I think
it does, it will use local. So if there's Staples, just say, for example, Staples is under the Sourcewell contract, you would get all your paper from Staples, you could have it delivered and they would bring it here. So there's a lot of beneficial items under that Sourcewell contract.
Thank you. We'll look into it. Sourcewell. Okay, I'm good for now.
All right,
Catch me on number 8.
okay. Anybody else have any discussion on finances? All right, then we have to vote. Okay. Whenever you're ready, Christine.
Mrs. Smart,
Yes.
Mr. Charles-Nelson,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Frisbee,
Yes.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Jones,
Yes.
and Mrs. Minnick.
Yes. Okay, up next is personnel. I don't think there's been any. Yeah. So on the personnel, we have Act 93 retirements, support resignations, professional retirements, support retirements, support contracts, professional temporary contracts for 90 days, supplemental contracts, and athletic volunteers. Do I have a motion to?
I'll make
bring it to the
motion.
table? Okay,
Second.
all right.
Thank you, Mrs. Minnick. I just want to highlight a few things on the personnel. First of all, I'd like to recognize our most recent retirees, our potential retirees. Mr. Clark is here tonight. He's retiring as principal. He started here in Athens. He's going to finish here in Athens, and I want to thank him for that. Much appreciated. Also, we have some professional staff retirements. We have Mrs. Chapman, who's been an elementary teacher for a very, very long time, and she's one of the people I go to for advice. So Mrs. Chapman is retiring. Mr. Brown at the high school, learning support. Mr. Wakely, high school math teacher, and Mrs. Elaine Welch, who is a science teacher at the high school as well. They have all submitted their retirements, and they're going to be effective at the end of June. In support retirements, Mr. Gilbert, who is the disciplinary study hall monitor, and Mrs. Lori Wells, who's the 12-month secretary at the high school, have all submitted their retirements. I'd like to also, if the board so approves tonight, recognize some new faces. Melinda Pelton, Angela Williams. Melinda is going to be an aide at SRU. Angela is going to work in the cafeteria at Rowe. We have Tracy Roberts and Kristen Foster. Tracy's going to be the temporary special education teacher out at SRU. She'll be replacing Lori Perry. And Kristen Foster will be replacing Linda Stein, who retired last week in the family and consumer science position. Those are the highlights I wanted to make, Kevin. So, thank you.
Anybody else have any questions, comments? So we'll go ahead and vote. We're gonna vote on A, B, C, D, E, F, and H. We need to pull G for a separate vote. So under personnel, we'll vote A, B, C, D, E, F, H. Christine, when you're ready.
Mr. Charles-Nelson,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Frisbee,
Yes.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Jones,
Yes.
Mrs. Minnick,
Yes.
and Mrs. Smart.
Yes.
And we'll now vote on letter G, the supplemental contracts. Christine, when you're ready.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Frisbee,
Yes.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Jones,
Yes.
Mrs. Minnick,
I abstain.
Mrs. Smart,
Yes.
and Mr. Cheresnowski.
Yes.
Okay. We'll now move on to contracts and agreements. Looks like 2 agreements for Blast IU and a physical therapy recommendation memo. Do I have a motion to bring this to the table?
So moved.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mrs. Minnick. Mind if I jump in?
Nope, go right ahead.
Thank
I was
you.
gonna ask you for clarification.
So IDA pass-through funds from the IU. So the IU receives IDA money and they pass it to us for us to spend on IDEA purposes. This specific agreement says that we have about $5,334, give or take a couple pennies. And we have to specifically spend that money on 5-year-olds who are in kindergarten, who have an IEP. Okay. If you look at the E-rate agreement, we partner with the IU to help us receive E-rate grants. E-rate is a grant, and Clint's done this for a long time. It gives us money to help us increase our connectivity or improve our connectivity and access to the outside world. And finally, we did receive 2 proposals for PT services. Mr. Cummings his analysis, and I agree with it. His recommendation is to not accept either proposal and to continue an RFP searching for a more local provider who will meet the specific needs of our students. So that memo is to not recommend those proposals. Thank you.
Okay, any questions? All right, we'll go ahead and vote. Christine, when you're ready.
Mr. Frisbee,
Yes.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Jones,
Yes.
Mrs. Minnick,
Yes.
Mrs. Smart,
Yes.
Mr. Cheresnowski,
Yes.
and Mrs. Cooper.
Yes.
All right, up next is policies. Bunch of second read policies and a couple first reads, and we are tabling 2 of them. We're tabling 006, excuse me, and 001. May I have a motion to bring this to the table?
So moved. Second,
Thanks.
one of us.
All right, any discussion, questions, concerns? All right, Christine, when you're ready.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Jones.
Yes.
Mrs. Minnick,
Yes.
Mrs. Smart,
Yes.
Mr. Cheresnowski.
Yes.
Ms. Cooper,
Yes.
and Mr. Frisbee.
Yes.
Okay. Up next, curriculum and instruction items. So new high school course, Introduction to Personal Finance. Oh, that's pulled. Okay, so we're pulling A.
Yeah, that should have. That was discussed at the last board meeting. We were gonna revisit it, but since we have gotten indication of Pennsylvania changing their standards for literacy and financial literacy. And it makes no sense to approve a course when we don't know the standards that Pennsylvania wants us to approach. So that needs to just come off the agenda completely until a later time, once Pennsylvania releases its standards.
Okay. So we're gonna look at B through F. Overnight trips for the FFA to Harrisburg. And the Science Olympiad field trip to University of Pennsylvania. And the 24-25 school year calendar, the draft.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
If you would be so kind to let me just kind of summarize.
Mhm.
The overnight, any field trips that's overnight, you guys have to approve. There is one note that, the farm show already happened. I think, it was, a late submittal, but we probably wouldn't have been as late if we had our regularly scheduled, board meeting. And then they have their leadership conference that's also in Harrisburg, in February, and there's a overnight science Olympiad that needs to be approved. So I did hand out to you all a copy of the draft calendar for 24-25. Just a couple quick notes on the calendar. My initial process was I asked for feedback. I got some feedback from some people, some teachers. We usually have committee, and I'll be honest with you, I thought for this time I would try to do this and just collect feedback rather than try to have a committee meeting and kind of back and forth some similar ideas that we've done for years. The second thing I did was I looked at schools who were top performing, and I kind of looked at their calendars and saw if there was any trends or any things that I found as similarities. And some of those things I did find. And then I also tried to work collaboratively with the schools that are all attached to the Northern Tier Career Center, because the number of minutes and hours that our students need are very defined. And if our calendars vary too much, it makes it very difficult for the Career Center to do that. So with the mind of, making mindful breaks for students and also making sure that we meet the professional development needs of our staff was important. So our calendar does look a little different. I added an in-service day, an additional in-service day at the beginning of the school year, and mainly because there are so many compliance measures now that we are being asked to complete on a yearly basis, that an additional day to make sure that is done and out of the way is great. Also giving teachers a little bit more time to be ready. You'll notice we start on a Monday in August. We still have a nice opportunity to start slow with 2 4-day weeks. There's also breaks after each marking period. Those are Act 80 days, which allow the culmination of curriculum planning and, kind of wrapping up the marking period and getting ready for the next marking period. And we also focused on getting some of our more important breaks in before the state testing windows, which you'll notice happens on April 21st. One thing I did add that has been asked for is a no school day after the Super Bowl. Our test typically pretty low for everyone. So I thought it'd be good. And it was a very common thing. So our calendar reflects a lot of similarities between our local county schools. There are some trends in there that help us build a calendar that is from high performing schools. And we are done on Thursday, June 5th, with the last teacher day on June 6th. Graduation will be Friday, and with a rain date of Saturday the 7th.
So graduation is June 6th.
Yeah, we'll have it on the 6th. We'll have it on the Friday. They'll give us another opportunity for the high school to practice if they need to. We have practices with the staff too.
And a rain date of June 7th.
Yes.
Mr. Stage, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am. I'll try my best.
The last few years, on the first day of school, we have done a split.
Yep.
Schedule to bring kids back a little bit slower, and I know that was based on teacher feedback as
Mhm.
well, that.
Yep.
Is that still the plan, or?
Yes.
Bringing everyone together?
So that was up for discussion. I actually left that discussion to the administrators, and it will remain at least for next year. We will do what we call a smooth start, where we'll bring the cohorts in on alternating days. We'll really reevaluate after next year. We'll have it now for 3 years, so we'll give it another shot. It meets the needs of us because we have to. The first couple of days are bringing in students, establishing the expectations, getting everybody's paperwork done, and doing that in smaller groups allows those kids to do it in a more less stressful environment, and it also allows our teachers to give those kids a little bit more attention on those days. So that's still a possibility.
So that means that the 26th will be for probably half the students, and then the 27th will be the other. Of August, sorry.
Yep, the 19th will be for half the students in the 20th. Or yeah, the
Oh, so-
26th and 27th,
Okay.
correct, yes, I'm sorry.
We
Okay.
might want to just mark that. I don't know. I think.
Yep,
I
we
think
will.
Last year that was marked on the calendar, so
Yeah.
people knew that there was that.
The calendar is gonna have a few more items on it than what you see now. What I wanted you guys to see is the dates, most importantly. Also, we'll only be having a fall parent-teacher conference and no spring parent-teacher conferences. And that was just based on the gathering of feedback.
Mr. Stage, I have a quick question for you.
I'll do my best.
So in November, I know that our region for Athens, a lot of kids do take off. Well, we've had it off over the years for the first day of hunting season. And we no longer see that on there. No, I know the state is in the process of changing, possibly going back, but they haven't said anything.
Yeah,
We don't have that on here, and I'm just worried with it is December 2nd?
yeah. I thought
Okay.
it was. We did.
It's never been in December.
I
yeah.
did try to look it up.
Okay.
Mr. Johnson, I did try to look it up, and I do know that things like hunting season is very important for our local community, and I did try to make sure I address it.
Okay.
And I will continue to do that. And if they do bring back the first, like if they do split up doe and buck season, we'll address it on the
Okay.
calendar.
I just know that the kids in the area, it's pretty strong.
Yep.
Feeling for a lot of them. So.
Yep, exactly. Also, I just want to point out, we're not required to meet 180 days of instruction anymore. This does meet the 180 days of instruction. And there are 174 student days, 6 act 80 days, and we have about 1,200 extra minutes extra. So which is a significant amount of time.
What's the requirement?
990 hours for secondary and 900 hours for elementary.
Day wise.
It's a 5.4 hour day. And our day is almost 6.5 hours, I think 6.25 to 6.5 hours a day.
But that allows us to get out earlier. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
be
it could.
done.
And we did not, I do not want to like make any wacky changes to the calendar. I want to keep it a very traditional calendar. I know in downstate, like around the Harrisburg area, they are already talking about a 4-day school week and things like that. Our problem is everything that we do, we have to kind of do it in some sort of concert with our local school districts because we are attached to the Career Center together. And it would take some creative thinking. And I want to dive into that and have an investigation versus just create a calendar and hope for the best.
We also have families that depend on a 5-day school. week.
Yep, we do. I'll keep that opinion in mind.
All right, any other questions? Okay. Voting, okay, go ahead, Christine.
Mr. Jones,
Yes.
Mrs. Minnick,
Yes.
Mrs. Smart,
Yes.
Mr. Terrence
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Frisbee,
Yes.
and Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
Transportation items, none at this time. Building and grounds items, none at this time. Other business, 2024 board representatives. Okay, so we have nomination of the following 2024 representatives. PSBA would be myself, Northern Tier Career Center. Representative will be Mrs. Cooper with the alternative of Mr. Owen. And there are currently no representatives or alternatives for the last IU 17. We need to vote on that. I just need to, does anyone have any questions or concerns?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any against? All right, that motion carries. Yes. visitor comments. Please give your name, the borough or township where you live, organization which you represent, and the subject matter. It is requested that comments be kept to 3 minutes. Comments relative to private student or employee matters should be directed to the superintendent outside of the meeting. Are there any visitor comments? Okay, moving on, board communications. We have personnel transfers, field trip request, and Sunday facility use request. Anybody have any questions on the board communications? Board discussion items. Anybody have any items that they'd like to bring up for discussion? All right, future meetings. We have a work session meeting on Tuesday, February 13th at the administration building. Committees will meet at 6:15. And we have a regular session meeting on Tuesday, February 20th at Lynch Buston Elementary at 7 o'clock. We will have an executive session after for legal. No action will be taken. And do I have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Thank you.